Do you know why you're alive today? It's because of what happened the night of October 27, 1962, at the bottom of the ocean inside of a Soviet submarine. 45 degrees Celsius, no air conditioning, no contact with Moscow in days. Three men in a steel tube at the bottom of the ocean are about to decide whether the human race continues to exist. Two of them voted to end it. You're alive right now because of what the third man said. You don't know his name. Do you know her name? The woman whose letter, written on an ordinary Tuesday morning, gave half the American population the right to vote? You've probably never heard of the teenager standing on the wrong street corner who started a war that led to the deaths of 20 million people. History was never made by the people you were taught to remember. It was made by people exactly like you. It was August 1920, Tennessee. 35 states had already voted yes. One more was needed. Without Tennessee, women in America would not vote. With it, half the population of the most powerful democracy on earth would gain the right that had been denied since the country was founded. The vote in Tennessee stood at 49-49. Everything rested on the 99th member of the legislative, Harry T. Burns, 24 years old, a young conservative who had spent his entire political career opposing women's suffrage. The people who knew him expected a no. That morning, he received a letter from his mother. Phoebe Esminger Burns had spent her entire life in the Tennessee countryside. She was not a politician. She was not an activist. She was a woman who had raised her son alone and believed he was a good person. The last line of the letter read, "Vote for suffrage and don't keep them in doubt. Don't forget to be a good boy." Harry Burns changed his vote. The letter, written by a woman whose name almost nobody knows, changed history. The ink of her pen flowed all the way to the American Constitution. 42 years later, another ordinary man was about to make another impossible decision. October 4th, 1962, the submarine B-59 leaves port. Nobody abroad knows what's coming. On board are three senior officers, including Vasili himself.
Привет, капитан. Отплываем.
Vasili Arkhipov was 36 years old. He had a wife at home. He had survived a nuclear accident on a previous submarine that killed several crew members. He knew better than anyone what these weapons could do. It's 1914. A young 19-year-old man named Gavrilo Princip, part of the Young Bosnia rebel group with the goal of freeing Bosnia from Austro-Hungarian control, conspires to kill Archduke Ferdinand, the next in line to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Princip had suffered from tuberculosis. He knew he didn't have long. As the days carried on, Princip's health got worse. As the Archduke approached, Princip and his 6 accomplices threw a grenade at the young heir, which bounced off his car, injuring guards in the car following behind. As the crowd scattered, Archduke Ferdinand's motorcade hurried away. The dream of Bosnian resistance lay dormant. Disappointed young Princip walked off to the corner of Franz Joseph Street, part of the original route but sadly abandoned after the bombing. Then, something nobody planned happened. Ferdinand changed his plans after the bombing, hoping to head to the hospital to see the injured men. The car got lost and wound up near Moritz Schiller's Delicatessen on Franz Joseph Street, right where Princip was standing. Princip mortally wounded Franz Ferdinand and Sophie by firing a pistol into their convertible car at close range. Franz Ferdinand's last words were, "Sophie, Sophie, don't die, live for our children," followed by 6 or 7 utterances of, "It is nothing, it is nothing, it is nothing." He died at 11:30 a.m. Within 1 month, Europe was at war. Within 4 years, 20 million people were dead. The Russian Revolution, the rise of Hitler, the atomic bomb, everything that defined the 20th century started with 2 bullets and 1 wrong turn. Gavrilo Princip died in a prison cell 4 years later. He was 23 years old, he weighed 40 kilograms, his arms had been amputated. He never saw the war he started. He thought he was liberating Bosnia. He had no idea what corner he was standing on. Neither do you. October 27th, the submarine has been underwater for days. No communication from Moscow.
Сержант, что происходит? Что происходит, сержант?
December 7th, 1941, Honolulu, 7:33 a.m. A warning arrived. General George Marshall in Washington had spent the entire morning decoding a Japanese diplomatic message. The 14th and final part, the one that made the target clear. He wrote an urgent telegram to the commander at Pearl Harbor. Attack imminent, be on alert. The telegram reached RCA Telegraph Office in Honolulu at 7:33 a.m. A motorcycle messenger named Tadao Fuchikami picked it up, noted it was addressed to Fort Shafter 5 miles away, and set off on his 1938 Indian Scout. He had a few civilian stops to make along the way. At 7:55, the first Japanese planes appeared over Pearl Harbor. Fuchikami was still riding. He dove into the roadside ditch as the bombs fell. When the noise stopped, he climbed back onto his motorcycle and rode to a ridge overlooking the harbor. He stared back at the black smoke rising from the water. Fireboats moved through the debris. Ships were burning. He still had the message in his pocket. He rode to Fort Shafter. The receiving clerk was not at his desk. He was standing on a balcony watching the destruction. The message was taken, not time-stamped, left in a distribution box. By the time it was decoded and delivered to the right office, the time was 2:58 p.m. The attack had ended at 9:45 a.m. 2,403 Americans were dead. Tadao Fuchikami was not a coward. He rode through an active war zone. The clerk on the balcony was not a traitor. The warning was real, the message was sent, the messenger was brave, and it arrived 5 hours and 13 minutes too late. Ordinary person, devastating consequences.
Мы не знаем, началась ли война. Мы не знаем, началась ли война.
October 27th, 1962. Somewhere in the Caribbean, below the surface, the temperature inside submarine B-59 had reached 45 degrees Celsius. The air conditioning had failed days ago. Men moved through corridors slick with condensation. Uniforms were soaked through and through, hands slipping on equipment they could barely see. Carbon dioxide levels were rising. Sailors were fainting at their posts. The submarine had been underwater for days. No communication from Moscow, no orders, no information, no way of knowing what was happening on the surface. They didn't know if the war had already begun. Outside the hull, explosions. Small ones. Americans were dropping charges. Signals designed to force the submarine to surface, not to destroy it. But inside B-59, in the heat and the darkness and the silence from Moscow, there was no way to know that. Captain Valentin Savitsky had had enough. He gave the order to prepare the nuclear torpedo. B-59 was carrying a weapon with roughly the same destructive yield as the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Savitsky believed the war had started. He believed that they were under attack. He believed if they were going to die at the bottom of the ocean, they were going to take the Americans with them. Under no Soviet naval protocol, launching required unanimous agreement from 3 senior officers.
Система показывает, что американцы атаковали. Следует ли нам нанести ответный удар, командиры?
Duh. The third officer was Vasili Arkhipov, a 36-year-old man with a wife at home, a survivor of the K-19 nuclear accident, a reactor leak that had killed several of his crew members with radiation poisoning. He had watched men die from the invisible thing these weapons leave behind. He knew better than anyone in that room what they actually did. He looked at Savitsky and said, "Niet." He didn't know the depth charges were practice rounds. He didn't know the war hadn't started. He didn't know anything more than Savitsky did. He just believed that a decision this irreversible deserved more certainty than they had. Savitsky screamed at him. The argument was intense. The heat was unbearable. Men were barely conscious at their posts. Arkhipov didn't move. They surfaced, made contact with Moscow. The war had not begun. The depth charges were signals. Vasili Arkhipov went home to his wife. He never spoke publicly about what happened. His name appeared in no history books for 30 years. He died in 1998, likely from the radiation absorbed on the K-19 decades earlier. One word, in the dark, at the bottom of the ocean, by a man whose name you didn't know this morning. And you are alive. History has been shaped by people no more ordinary than you. A 19-year-old who walked into a random alley, the Archduke's car took a wrong turn. World War I began. A mother wrote a letter to her son on a Tuesday morning. He changed his vote. Half of America got the right to vote. A naval officer said one word in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean, "You're alive." None of them knew what they were doing. That's the butterfly effect. An ordinary moment, an ordinary person, consequences beyond anything they could have imagined. Because, dear viewers, actions ripple. I really don't know how to end this video, because the whole argument I just made is that nobody making history knew they were making it. Harry Burns didn't know, Fujikami didn't know, Arkhipov, he definitely didn't know. And I'm sitting here editing this at 3 a.m. and I have no idea if anyone's going to watch this. If this was just one person, 100, or a million. But if the whole video is true, if it's actually true that ordinary moments ripple out further than anyone can see, then maybe this moment, right now, you watching me say this, is one of them. Maybe this video is the start of a ripple. I don't know. Maybe that's arrogant to even say. Could a crappy video made by a university student really change something? But I guess you could say the same about a crappy letter from a mother to her son. Somebody, somewhere, is about to do something small. They will never know it mattered. Will you?